From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
All right, well, welcome back. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster podcast. This is your weekly podcast about consumption. With me this week is the host of the Dewey Pod Monster podcast, and he is also the authority on Michigan craft beer. His name is Sean, and Sean, how are you doing today?
I'm good. A little rusty.
You sure about that?
I'm a little rusty.
Yeah, it's been about 2 weeks since we've recorded. This is, aside from a medical leave, this might be the longest break that we've taken between episodes.
I know it's weird when we do take, we didn't take time because of anything, just because we had stuff in the bank and we figured it'd be better to bank that, I guess, than to keep rolling on. But it's weird. It's just only been 2 weeks since we recorded last. It feels like forever. So I don't even know. What is this podcast about?
It is about consumption. It's about eating hot dogs and putting mustard on things. And
oh, yeah.
Occasionally it's about trips to Menards and how you can save big money on smart thermostats.
Yeah. You just got to get those rebates.
That's right. 11%, limited time, all the time. So I'm sure you have watched a whole bunch of shit, and as have I. Do you have anything that you kind of want to highlight as far as what you've watched over the last couple weeks?
I've been watching some stuff. There's been, again, 2 weeks, so there's been so much stuff that I think I've watched that I forgot more than I remember that I watched. But
same.
I've been on this kick of going on YouTube and like finding old documentaries that I wanted to watch. So I talked a couple weeks ago about Dig, the Brian Jonestown Massacre / Dandy Warhol's documentary thing. This one wasn't something I necessarily wanted to watch, but the National Film Board of Canada, if you log in either with a VPN, a Canadian VPN, or they have more stuff if you have a Canadian VPN, but you log onto their thing, you key AOL keyword, National Film Board, now you go on YouTube and you look it up, and they had one called King of the Hill. And I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. So it's like a documentary from 1974 about...
Damn it, Bobby.
one of the greatest Canadian baseball players of all time. And I had never heard of this guy because, I like baseball, but I'm not that big of a fan. Ferguson Jenkins. You hear this guy?
I know of a Ferguson, but it's not that Ferguson.
He was a pitcher for the Cubs, and it follows his season in 1974. He's like the main person they talk to. A couple things that I thought was really interesting. For his first few seasons when he was playing baseball in the off season, he played with the Harlem Globetrotters, wow, okay, that's pretty cool. He made $3,000 a game.
It's an interesting side job.
Yeah, his summer job.
Wait, that's with the Harlem Globetrotters. He made $3,000 a game, or
his baseball career, like at the height of his career, this 1974 season. And is
that good for 1974, or is that I don't know.
I guess. I don't make $3,000 a game.
Well, no, I don't know how baseball scaled salary wise. I would assume that pitchers make more than that now.
Yeah, a little bit, couple bucks here or there, but
right.
They have this amazing, the song "The Entertainer."
Yes.
Do you?
Not off the top of my head.
It's like dun 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 dun.
Oh yeah. Okay.
They play this amazing like rip-off version of that song. Like when in the 90s when every song for a Fox sitcom played Two Princes by Spin Doctors, but they changed like two notes so they didn't have to pay them.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing. I can't like do the rendition. Maybe I'll add it in, but it's this really horseshit rip-off version of The Entertainer. That's all you need to hear. I'll probably insert it in here. Other than that, I watched that Arnold documentary on Netflix. It's a 3-part.
I watched that too.
Did you? What'd you think of that?
I wish I would have spent more time on his film career. And so I'm sure you would have said this, but the first part of the documentary is just heavy on him being a bodybuilder, and it talks a little bit about his childhood. The second part is his film career, like the first part of his film career. And I feel like that one flies by. And then the third part is mostly about him being the governor. And I don't know. I liked it. I found it to be interesting. I didn't really, I'm kind of an Arnold fan, so there wasn't a ton of stuff that I didn't feel like I at least had an idea about that was in there, but it was cool to hear him talk about it. I loved when he was talking about getting the role for Terminator, and I think the best thing in the whole documentary is they say he was up for the role against O.J. Simpson, and they gave him the role because according to him, no one believed that OJ could be a stone cold killer. And you hear the entire film crew start laughing at him when he says that.
I think he says that in like 1997 or something, right? So it's not.
Well, he says it. Yeah,
it's after the fact.
So it's funny hearing the crew crack up at him saying it.
I did like how it was split up like that into 3 pieces. It made it more digestible, I think. And like you said, it would have been nicer if they kind of went a little bit more into his film career, but they kind of interweaved his huge time.
Well, they kind of skipped over a lot of like I don't think they talk about Predator at all in that documentary. But I mean, fine, if you want to kind of cherry pick stuff for that section of his career, but he also has like a second film career after he was the governor, because that's when he did the Expendables movies, and he did The Last Stand, and didn't he have like a zombie movie he did or something, Maggie or something like that?
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called, but that sounds, I mean, I know the movie you're talking about, I just don't, Maggie sounds like it's familiar, but I don't think that's what it, but yeah.
He's got a good 10 to 20 movies that he's done since he's been the governor, and they didn't talk about that at all. And I would have been somewhat interested. I mean, granted, those movies aren't nearly as good as when he was in his heyday, but it speaks to him, his character, and no pun intended, that he still went back to that art form and has continued to be to some degree successful with it.
Well, I think it's more the way that they tell the story. It's more of an encapsulation of those years. So it's like the early part of his life, then the middle part of his life, and then the senior part of his life. I thought it was really interesting that he's really open about his whole kind of family situation and his affair with his son. Now I just saw an article about his son being ripped for some action movie he's going to be in. I didn't realize that he was basically a millionaire before he even started the movies, because he invested in all this real estate in California. So it was an interesting kind of look into his life. It's something that I didn't even think about. You know, you know about him as the bodybuilder, you know him as the actor, you know him as the governor, his like political kind of career, but all that other stuff was just kind of interesting to find out the backstory about it. It's 3-hour pieces.
Yeah, I thought it was really admirable how he kind of owns up to his shortcomings in his life. Like, they show it when he's on the campaign trail, and they have however many women that said he claimed he groped, whatever happened with it, you know. I can't think of a politician or another politician that's just jumped in front of this and said, hey, I was a dumb kid and I did some really stupid things, but that's not who I am now. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but he owned up to it as much as a guy can, you know, for a politician, which I was like, that's kind of respectable. I mean, he didn't claim to be a saint or say that he never fucked up, and kind of moved on from there. And then you're talking about the notorious affair that he had. Like, he's fairly open about it. He doesn't claim that he did the right thing in that, but he comes off genuine. Like, he feels bad that he did it. He knows he screwed up, and, you know, what can you do? You move on.
Yeah, he's just got this positive, like this message of positivity that's refreshing, I guess, in a way. You know, everybody seems politicians aren't very trustworthy, and he comes across as someone who genuinely, I don't know, cares about other people. So anyways, watched Arnold. And then this weekend, I have never seen it before, and I'm curious if you've seen it. I watched Nightmare Beach. Have you ever seen that before?
Sounds familiar.
The cover is like a motorcycle helmet with a face like a visor, and in the reflection, it's a woman screaming, and I think he's like choking her or something. But it's this movie that is like this total 80s teen kind of movie that has these like Scooby-Doo whodunit kind of elements to it, but it's also like a biker,
I remember this
gang movie.
I believe I rented this on VHS at some point.
I had heard of it, but I had never watched it, and we ended up watching it, like I said, just this past weekend, and it was actually pretty entertaining. Like the story is really dumb, and it has all these twists and turns, and it doesn't really make all that much sense when you sit and think about it, but it wasn't that bad. It was pretty good. It opens, this guy gets electrocuted. I forget what his name is. I keep wanting to say it's like Scorpio or something, but I know it's not. Diablo, that's his name. And he gets convicted of killing this girl's sister and some other people. And he, like, after he gets electrocuted, his body, I think somebody digs up his body, and then these killings start. You know, there's this whole mystery about, well, is it Diablo or who is it? And I don't know, it was pretty entertaining. It wasn't like the greatest movie of all time by any means, but it scratched the itch.
Looks like a Tubi find. Is that a Tubi movie or is that something else?
I quote unquote found a copy of it, but I don't know. It might be somewhere. I can look it up.
Hey, others that you want to touch on?
It's available free on Canopy. So Canopy is like, Canopy is like through your local library.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, so no, that's all I watched.
It's an interesting film for a library to have.
Yeah.
So
go to your local library and rent Nightmare Beach.
Nightmare Beach. So I, like you, have had, I only wrote down some things that were worth kind of highlighting. The first two I'm going to not go into detail with because I think both of them will get episodes at some point. One of them is Hell House LLC, and I can't really try to pitch that as an episode to you until we're a little bit further away from Terrifier, just because there's another fucking clown in it. And
all right.
I know you have a clown quota. So we'll hold off on that, but that is available on Tubi. The other one is Intruder, which is available on Tubi also, which you're probably familiar with. It's got Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi. It's around Evil Dead-ish times. There's a Ace Hardware that's local talk for a second here. There's Ace Hardware that's over on Maple in West Bloomfield. It's about 10-15 minutes from here.
Mm-hmm.
The store, basically the movie's about a guy who goes into a store and kills people. And, whatever.
That could never happen.
The store is still there, and it is a Ace Hardware now as opposed to a grocery store. So I'm was like, ooh, local nerdy thing. But both of those were influenced by the Podcast in the Woods group. So you two will both get episodes about that at some point in the not too distant future when we can handle clowns again. Watched a little documentary called The King of Arcades on Tubi, and that was pretty terrible. I don't recommend that. It's just another, it's shot poorly. It looks like it's one of those... The cameras in it are not good. I would guess this is probably late 90s type documentary, and I'm using the term loosely. And it just follows some guy who buys a bunch of arcade stuff and repairs it. Could be better. It's not very good. The two things I watched that were actually really entertaining. So I don't think we talked about this on mic when we did our interview with David Weiner, but he had mentioned the documentary Crystal Lake Memories, which is basically taking you through the entire Friday the 13th saga from 1 all the way up to reboot. It's just a super deep dive, and it goes chapter by chapter, movie by movie, and it pulls a lot of the stars, basically all the stars you care about except Crispin Glover show up to talk about the film unless they're dead. He's the only one that doesn't seem like they could get, and I don't know why. But it's, if you're a Friday the 13th fanatic like I am, you can absolutely get lost in that for 6 hours and have I left a 6-hour documentary I want more. Why is there not more? This is too short, which I don't say that very often about 6-hour film pieces. I don't really know where that's available. I came across a copy through other means, but it is definitely worth watching if you can find it. I can say that for sure. Then the thing I probably enjoyed the most that I watched this week, even more than our title or topic for the week, and I don't know if we talked about this on mic or if we talked about this off mic, but I watched the Beastie Boys. It's really more like a video autobiography that they did with Spike Jonze a few years back. It's currently on Apple TV right now. That band, for me, I have a soft spot for that band. I think I've mentioned it several times before, but they do a really good job just going through, Genesis to Revelation of their career from the whole way. Obviously, MCA's not on it because he's no longer with us, but super cool autobiography. It's shot really well. It looks really good. Both Adrock and Mike D, they do a great job of telling this story, even though you can see at points they both get a little broken up about it. And they're just such a cool band because sonically, I don't know if there's a band that's ever really gotten that lo-fi sound with a high-tech end at the same time as they did. And it's been fucking 20 years now since they've really done, well, I guess 2009, so 15 years since they've been able to record anything. I don't think there's anything still that sounds even remotely close to their sound.
If I remember correctly, it's they put out a book, a table book or something, right? A coffee table book, and it's basically a reading or an enactment. They're on stage, Ed Rock and
they're on
Mike
a big
D.
theater.
Yeah, they're telling stories from the book on stage, and I think it's cut in with clips from the time period if they have it. So they talked about, like you said, their kind of punk life, but pre-first album, Paul's Boutique, them moving out to California. That's a really well done documentary. Like you said, there's not a whole lot of bands that really captured, came from what they came from, the sound that they came from, and then evolved until putting out these instrumental funk / I don't know, grungy, not grunge music, but grungy 70s kind of tunes, or having Tuvan throat singers in some of their songs.
It's got this lo-fi soul, and when I say soul, I mean think Shaft soundtrack or something like that. That kind of not what modern soul is usually represented as. But yeah, there's nothing like it. And how many bands come around and get Rick Rubin and Russell Simmons to produce their first album and then say, if we want to be a band, we have to get away from these two guys, because they're like two of the most powerful people in the music industry, and have been since I don't know, early 80s. And yeah, they did that one album. And I mean, again, I'm a fan. I don't really like that License to Ill that much. I kind of agree with them. They're like, hey, we were kids. It's kind of dumb kid party music. Yeah, it sounds like that. And that's fine. Like, if that's what you're into, there's nothing wrong with that album at all. It's just, when I listen to their stuff, that's the one that I always skip over all of them. Yeah,
it's the one that launched them basically, but it is. I don't think anybody would argue with you telling you it's probably the worst of their catalog.
Oh, for sure. And it's funny, they talked about how Paul's Boutique bombed, and that's one of my favorite albums in their catalog. The other thing I thought was really cool too, and they don't talk about the show that I saw them at, but they talk about how when they played a show, they always went into it as a competition. So no matter who they were playing, they were trying to one up them so that you would remember whatever they did. And speaking from the one experience I had seeing them, they absolutely did that without a doubt. So
yeah, I never saw them. I know they played a lot of festival stuff more around the time that I was probably would have been interested. And I'm like a really late bloomer on them. Like I found them, I don't know, like Check Your Head. I knew all that stuff. I knew like Ill Communication and that, but I think I kind of found them a little bit more in the In Sounds from Way Out album, the instrumental album that they did, and really fell in love with the sound that they were doing. And, you know, that's when you kind of realize, oh, they're actually playing these instruments. It's not just like, it's not so sample heavy, whereas their music prior to that it was. But and like you said, some of the tech stuff that they did, you know, going back and watching some of that now, especially Hello Nasty, like all the samples and stuff that they were picking out and how they were doing it. It's fascinating if you're into like music production at all. It's a cool kind of thing to watch. Anyways, so that's the Beastie Boys.
I think I was a late bloomer to them too, because I mean, we grew up in a similar time. Like, I'm sure you heard them on the radio, the same tracks that I did and everything going up. So it's not like you were unaware of them, but I saw them when I was like probably 22, 23-ish. So it would have been around early 2000s when I saw them, which is still pretty late in their career, because I think they said they ended at 2009 when MCA passed. So I would consider myself a late bloomer to them as well. But as soon as I saw them live, like I immediately went back and dove into everything I could find of them. That's how good they were.
My first experience, there was a flea market that my friend's mom took us to, and they had, you know, one of these little like dinky tables where they sell tapes and stuff. I mean, at the time, this was License to Ill. His mom bought the License to Ill tape for him, and it was relatively new. And I was like, you know, I was at the age where I was like, oh, we went someplace and your mom bought you something, didn't buy something for me. And I got all, you know, booger lipped about it. But that's my first, other than hearing their music on the radio.
Little brat.
That's my first experience.
So yeah, Beastie Boys. They're good.
You should listen to this little band called the Beastie Boys.
Yeah. Maybe don't skip the first album, but listen to it once and get to the
listen to
stuff.
It in chronological order and then don't listen to it again. That one.
They are a good band to do that with, because you can they talk about that in this. I don't even like calling it a documentary. It really feels more like an autobiography, because it's them telling the story.
Yeah, it's like a video audiobook. I mean,
yeah, but you could really hear, like, they talk about how on each album, they're like, this is where we found our sound, this is where we found our voice, this is where we started doing that, and you can totally hear it as the band progresses from album to album. They really do make leaps in each, you know, iteration of the band, which is cool to hear. So, and it's not like somewhere they, you know, the classic example is like a band like Weezer, where they change from album to album, but they seem like they got progressively worse every time that they did something new. So kind of the opposite of that.
They got that going for them.
Right. So anyway, this is not a Beastie Boys episode. Maybe we'll do that some other time, but
we do have a topic this week.
We do have a topic this week, and it is not the Beastie Boys. We're talking about the movie Maniac Cop. It is a movie from 1988. It has people that we like a whole lot in it, and we're going to talk about it, goddammit. We are rusty, so if I remember right, we usually start with a third-party review. This is another anonymous review that is on Rotten Tomatoes. This movie gives it 2 stars. While being pretty effective horror movie, what the fuck is this?
What the fuck is this? All right, as tradition would tell us, we have the storyline, we have the plot. What I'm going to do, because I just kind of scanned them real quick, I'm going to go with the IMDb storyline written by Mr. John Barrymore. And Mr. John has to say, innocent people are being brutally murdered on the streets of New York City by a uniformed police officer. As the death toll rises and City Hall attempts a cover-up, Frank McRae leads the investigation. A young cop, Jack Forrest, finds himself under arrest as the chief suspect, having been the victim of a setup by the real killer and a mysterious woman phone caller. Forrest, his girlfriend Teresa, and McRae set out to solve the puzzle before the Maniac Cop can strike again.
Yeah, they don't really, do too well at stopping the strike again part, but that's okay.
No, they don't. But that's a good wrap up of the story. I mean, we're going to obviously get into it, but that kind of lays down a lot of the foundation of what we're going to talk about.
So I suggested this movie because it's been a really long time before this week that I had watched it, and I just kind of wanted something grimy in 80s, like, to talk about, which I don't know when the last time we did that was, probably a week or two ago. Can't be that long, right?
Right.
But as the mood sees, this is what I was thinking. I said, hey, let's do Maniac Cop, and you didn't argue with me.
Yeah, it had been a while for me too.
It does deliver on grimy in 80s. There's no question about that. I guess we should start with the positives. Tom fucking Atkins, right?
Right. This has a really good cast, actually, of people that you recognize. Like, a lot of the people are people that you recognize from film. I mean, just if you're into the kind of movies that we watch, there are a bunch of people.
I think if you were going to ask your average, like, B-movie horror fan, who do you want to be your two leading guys as the good guys in a movie? Tom Atkins and Bruce Campbell have to be at the top of that list for probably 90% of people that are going to answer it.
So we got Tom Atkins, Bruce Campbell playing the two main male leads. Richard Roundtree, a.k.a. Shaft, is in this movie. I thought that was like, oh, that's pretty cool.
Two Shaft references, one episode.
Two Shafts, one episode. And, of course, Robert Z'Dar, who plays Matt Cordell, the Maniac Cop in question, who is, if you've seen him, he's unmistakable because he's got that huge jaw. And, I mean, the thing that I really found kind of striking about this movie is that it's obviously shot on film. You know, it's pre-digital. It's 1989, right? 89?
It's obviously the whole, like, guerrilla, we're just running around New York and we're not getting permits for anything type shooting too, which I respect the hell out of that.
Well, going back to 88, so it's 88. It is gorgeous. Like, for how low budget this looks, or how low budget this is, it doesn't look low budget. Like, there's a lot of thought put into everything. It's filmed, like you said, kind of guerrilla style. So it's filmed on location in New York City, you know, on the streets. They're, you know, in industrial areas, piers, all this kind of stuff. It just has this really grimy 80s feel to it. And before New York City was cleaned up for, you know, by Giuliani and all that stuff, where Times Square becomes the Times Square of what you think of it today. You know, back in that time, Times Square still had the peep shows and was still this super grimy, dirty area, and you can almost feel it. It just has this feeling on the film that it doesn't look cheap. For as cheap as the budget was on this, it doesn't look cheap. It's not expressed in the actual, like, visuals of the movie.
That's really well said, and you really do get a feel for, you know, I know this takes place in New York. I don't remember if they explicitly, no, they do explicitly say it's New York. They call it, scratch that.
They call it the Big Apple.
No, they call it New York. I couldn't remember it at this particular second of recording because I'm on the clock now. Anyway, as you do. This really does feel like a New York that is a whole different level of gross and grimy. We talked about this a little bit when we watched The Warriors, and it's just got that whole different feel. Like, every alley looks like an alley you would think twice about walking down. Every single bar, you're like, I mean, I could go there, but I might need a tetanus shot after, you know. Everything about it is got that real, like, dirty, grimy, like, I don't want to call it a grindhouse feel because I don't think it's quite that, but it's got that just late 70s, like early 80s vibe to it, even though this is late 80s.
It's funny you bring up The Warriors because there's a scene at the beginning of the movie where it's actually the first scene where the girl's running through the park after there's two guys trying to mug this woman, and she's running away from them. She's running through like a park or a playground or something, and they have those wooden, and I don't know, we're not from New York. I don't know anything about New York City other than Empire State Building's there and Statue of Liberty and, you know, whatever. The Big Apple.
Good food there, but I haven't been there. I haven't been there since I saw the Beastie Boys.
But she runs through this park and they have all those wooden structures like all Cyrus and all the gangs from the Warriors are standing on. You know, it's like, oh shit, this totally reminds me of the Warriors. So it has that, it's not quite as grungy as the Warriors looks, but it definitely has that feel to it.
It's a different kind of grungy though. Like the Warriors had so many people around I mean, it's New York. There's always a lot of people around, but this movie finds a way to kind of capture that New York. I don't know about this personally, but I've heard of like New York has a weird way of making you feel very isolated, even though you're in like the most populated area in the country. And this movie kind of makes you feel that like there's not a ton of scenes where there's just a shit ton of people wandering around. Like you're not seeing like, you know, the financial district where it's just dudes in suits, like just farming themselves in and out of like buildings or anything. It's got this really isolated feeling, even though you know that it's set in this huge city, which kind of plays to some of the creep factor to it.
Yeah. There's a scene after this Maniac Cop, you know, the newspapers are reporting it. They're trying to figure out what's going on, you know, who's behind all this stuff. It would be basically like if a serial killer was on the loose in a large metropolitan city and all these people are turning up dead. And there's a scene where a cop pulls a woman over and she's like, you know, she's already paranoid because this killer's on the loose and they think somebody says it's a cop. They think it's a cop that's killing these people. And the cop walks up to the car and they kind of play it off like it could be Cordell. And the lady shoots him, but shoots the cop. But the whole scene, there's like, it's just in like an industrial style area and there's no other people in the background. And there's so many scenes, like I mentioned at the beginning, the beginning scene. There are these two punks that are trying to rob this lady. There's one guy on the street that sees her, and that's not like, I'm sure it's late because she's closing a bar or she's leaving a bar late, but it just has this feeling. I always think of New York as being a city where people are out all the time, you know, at least one or two people out on the street, and there's just nobody out in any of these scenes. So like you said, it does have this real like isolated single person on the street, like one-on-one kind of feel the whole time. And it does add this little bit of a creep factor to it.
I thought that scene where she shoots the cop in the head is really funny for two reasons. One, talk about the most absolutely perfectly aimed shot from a shaking gun that's through a window where the cop does start to bend down, but you don't ever see him like his face enter her window, which is probably for the better. That probably would have gotten him an X rating if they showed, you know, her blowing this guy's face off that close. But I mean, she drills him like dead center, like right between the eyebrows. No problem. And the next scene, you just see, you know, Commissioner Shaft just like, well, it's okay. Everyone thinks it's a cop anyway. So, you know, like they just kind of imply like, well, we just let her go. It seems reasonable that she shot this cop in the head.
I think it's funny that they've kind of pinned it on a cop. Nobody really knows who it is, right? It's a maniac cop. And they do these people on the street interviews on the news or whatever that's playing in the background of a scene, and these people are saying how, well, back in my day, the cops just did whatever they want because that was the law and yada, yada, yada. And people, the innocent bystanders in the city are kind of talking about how, like, well, nobody's going to mess with a cop now. And you think about the parallels of now where people are so, like, against or so afraid of being killed by cops. But, you know, lawlessness is just... it's just the same as it ever was. It doesn't really matter that, you know, police are using excessive force. It's kind of this, I don't know, it's this kind of fairy tale, like revisionist history where you kind of, oh yeah, if the cops are super violent to people, everybody's going to be afraid of them. It's like, no, I think it kind of turns maybe a little bit sideways on that.
I think it's interesting too that especially by the end of the movie, you're really made to like Bruce Campbell's character. He plays Jack Forrest, who's the cop who is essentially getting framed for being the maniac cop. That's the very shorthand version of it. You meet Bruce Campbell by or Jack Forrest, and whatever we want to call him for this movie. You meet him by basically watching him cheat on his wife within the first 2 minutes of him being introduced in this movie.
Yeah.
He comes into the movie after we've got 2 or 3 bodies at this point, maybe something like that. And he's having a kind of standard argument with his wife, and it almost plays off like she doesn't want him to go out because she doesn't want him to get, I think he goes out after the guy gets shot in the head. So it's almost playing off like, I don't want you to get hurt. I don't want someone to think you're, you know, almost like she cares about him. You learn real quick that he's actually having an affair, which leads to how we're going to tie these characters all together. It's kind of an interesting way to kind of tie who you want your good guy to be and like do the whole like who done it, framed it frame
Frame
person
job?
thing. Yeah, that too.
Not to be confused with a rim
I don't-
job. That's a different thing.
Is it? I mean, he was in jail for a little bit, so
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know. It actually for this movie, it works pretty well in how they tie this character into the story and make him part of why the Maniac Cop is going out maniacking and kind of setting the story in motion.
I think it's weird with Bruce Campbell being in this movie. Like, this is the first time I haven't seen a ton of Bruce Campbell movies. He has like a shit ton of credits on his IMDb. You know, I mean, I've seen the high
Most
points.
of them are, those credits are like he walked on screen for a minute and said, "I'm Bruce Campbell," and then walked off screen.
Hi, I'm Bruce Campbell. And I walked off. I have never seen the guy.
It's like a Kevin Smith role.
I have never seen the guy other than in this movie, just in jeans and a white t-shirt. He just looks kind of weird when you see him just in that, you know, used to seeing him in Evil Dead just side note, does Bruce Campbell, well, not does, but in this movie, I feel like Bruce Campbell plays the most non-Bruce Campbell role ever, or at least he acts in the least Bruce Campbell way ever. Like, you're so used to Bruce Campbell either playing some kind of spin on Ash or some kind of spin on just himself being this larger than life kind of character. But this movie, he just kind of plays like a dude. Like, it's kind of totally out of character for what he usually does.
It's this era. Bruce Campbell is what it is. So when you see him in Intruder, he's kind of like, he plays a cop in that movie and he's just a generic cop. Like, he doesn't Bruce Campbell it up. I think this movie, so this came out in 88. This is probably before he really kind of took off in like the Comic Con world and all that type of stuff.
Cult cinema kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think this is before he realized he can make a living being Bruce Campbell. Bruce Campbell, the character, not just Bruce Campbell, the actor. Again, it's very different type of roles, obviously, but it's very similar to the Kevin Smith trajectory where he made, you know, up to what, Jane, Silent Bob or Strike Back or something like that, and then realized, hey, I can get money just for being Kevin Smith and showing up places and be like, I'm Kevin Smith. Same type of thing. And now, again, just like Bruce Campbell, when you see Kevin Smith in a movie, he's always playing some kind of caricature of Kevin Smith. Not, I'm assuming, not the real person, but the person that you think you know from Jane, Silent Bob, Clerks, etc. This is before he figured that out, I think.
And I think it's kind of funny that we've been talking been talking about this movie for 15 minutes. We have scantily mentioned Tom Atkins in this movie, and he is the main, like,
he's the best
good
part
guy.
of this movie,
yeah, he's the
by
main
far.
good guy for the first 45 minutes. This is about an hour and 30. This clocks at like an hour and 25 minutes or something like that.
About an hour and a half.
And I have to mention, and I brought this up to you yesterday, I somehow watched like a version of this with all the removed scenes or whatever. There's a Mayor Killam.
Did you hear why they added those scenes in?
No, I didn't hear why they added them. I know it's like on a Canadian release or something, but I don't know anything outside of that.
It got sold to syndication to Japan to play on TV, but in Japan, the movie has to be an hour and 32 minutes long so they can cut it for commercials and all that.
Okay.
So they added those scenes that you sent me, that's what they added in to bump the runtime to whatever they needed to get it in syndication in Japan.
That's crazy because they kind of go into the side story of the mayor's office trying to cover up this whole thing. And they do kind of mention it a little bit here and there, about this cover up, but they don't really get into it. And they don't really get into it in these deleted scenes either. They're just kind of like these side scenes. They look different than the rest of the movie. They are kind of have a different color palette. They're actors that are, there's one scene.
If you've seen any like deleted scenes on DVDs, this is kind of what they look like.
And there's one scene that has an actor that is in the rest of the movie for like 5 minutes. But other than that, there's these people don't show. They are totally encapsulated from the rest of the movie. It's just a really weird thing to have cut into a version of a movie. I guess it gives you the complete picture, but the scenes really don't add anything.
Yeah. So the reason why with that is those were all reshot. So they had recut the film and to get the 125 or whatever it was, the runtime. They had to, whoever was buying it for syndication paid them enough money to go back and reshoot those films to bump the runtime. So that's why you only see the mayor and the one dude who apparently is retiring. That I didn't catch that until I was like, oh, he's retiring. Good for him.
Hey, good luck in your retirement. Yeah, it's the mayor. It's
Right.
like his counselor or something, mayor's council. And one of the cops who was actually, he's in the stuff. for like a real short amount of time. This is, and we didn't mention this, but this is actually, I think this was written by Larry Cohen, who is, he had done Q the Winged Serpent and, Basket Case movies, the stuff. He's like a B movie schlockmeister, just like, this movie. Can I ask you one other thing? I don't know if you know. At the beginning.
Before you do.
Yeah.
This is also directed by William Lustig, which he also directed the movie Maniac. No cop, just Maniac. So there is some chops in this film, for better or worse.
It's clearly not an amateur film. But was this movie always a Troma thing? Or did Troma buy the rights to it or something? Because if you watch this...
I didn't realize it
If you watch this
Troma
on Tubi, it starts off with, the Troma, like the scene, the intro scene that Troma does with like the city in the background and stuff.
I watched it on Tubi. I must have missed that.
Yeah, it's just for, it's like the first 10 seconds or whatever. So it's kind of easy to miss. I was just curious if they backed it, or I don't know, a topic for another time, but I don't know how much stuff Troma buys after the fact and how much stuff that they fund or that they actually produce. I was just curious if you knew.
I mean, I'm looking at it right now. It says the production company is Shapiro Glickenhaus Entertainment.
Oh, James Glickenhaus, the exterminator.
Sure.
Look it up. Friends at home.
Yeah, I don't see anything on here about Troma at all.
Well, now I feel like I have to start it in Tubi. Hold on. I have to now. Maniac Cop.
I mean, I don't doubt you.
No, I know. Now I feel like I have to look it up.
But I get where you're coming from.
Cop. Maniac Cop. Oh, Elijah Wood Maniac.
Yeah, I don't care about that one.
Yeah, it has a whole... Yeah, Lloyd Kaufman and Michael Hertz present. Okay, I'll cut that out. But I just thought that was, just kind of just a curiosity.
Hey, you enlightened me. Good job.
Hey, thanks. I do my best.
There's a thumbs up there, but it was
Blocked.
So yeah, I think Tom Atkins really is, for me, he's kind of the whole thing that kind of draws me into this movie. And if I'm being honest, like so spoilers from this point out, if you haven't seen this like 30-year-old movie at this point, 35-year-old movie.
35, yeah.
He dies about 45 minutes or so into the movie. He doesn't survive this. I actually think the movie kind of goes on a pretty downhill trajectory at that point. Like I kind of lose interest in a lot of what happens after that. Essentially what you're getting is just like Bruce Campbell and Matt Gradell rattling sabers, essentially. And there's some things that are like anytime that Matt Gradell goes to a police station, it's kind of entertaining, because it doesn't end well for anyone inside the police station. But really, after Tom Atkins' character, McCrae, he's gone, I don't feel like there's a lot really holding the story together. Like he does such a good job of being the glue that's kind of connecting the dots to make you like understand, okay, this is why Jack Forrest or Bruce Campbell's in jail. This is why his mistress, is that the right word? Yeah, that's good enough. This is why she's involved and why we're interested. You've somehow made me care about his relationship with his mistress, even though his wife just got murdered in the process. Yeah. We didn't mention that. He does a good job of doing that, then connecting who Matt Cordell is, why Matt Cordell is, all those types of things. He ties it together really perfectly just to get thrown out a fucking window.
Yeah, I mean, it's like McCrae does all the police work, Tom Atkins does all the police work, and then Bruce Campbell, Jack Forrest, he just picks up the pieces and runs with it. And I have to say, you mentioned the window scene where Tom Atkins' character gets tossed out a window and that's how he dies. The stunts in this movie look so incredibly like a hair away from people being killed, like legitimately killed. That window scene.
Not to jump ahead, but the scene
the
where
off the pier?
Yeah, where I know it's Bruce Campbell up to a certain point, but it's not when it actually goes off the pier. Some guy actually jumped off of a truck that was falling off a pier.
Off of a truck that is going like rolling on the opposite direction, and I'm watching that thing
with no one driving it.
I was watching because that's a clip that when we talked about In Search of Darkness, that's a clip that that one of the parts, I don't remember, it might have been one or two, they show that scene, and it just looks like this stunt guy has like balls of steel. He is like a hair away from his like getting his head cracked open, or he like does a cartwheel. He cartwheels.
And how much collateral damage is just flying around that could, if not kill him, greatly injure him?
Yeah. And the Tom Atkins scene, he gets thrown out of a window, and there is clearly like a wire on this person, because it's not, those scenes where people get thrown out of windows and they get thrown like head first doing the
Looks like a
Superman,
dummy.
and then they do the roll onto their back so they can land on the pad. The guy, he's doing the Superman out of the window, and then suddenly, like, they show the angle where he instantly, like, whips around and it, like, snaps. That makes my back hurt just, like, thinking of the scene, how brutal it looks. And the guy, the stun guy lands on the car. It, like, he collapses the roof of the car. I'd be really interested to see how that was actually done, because that is so, like, realistic looking. I mean, never seen somebody fall out of a 3-story window onto a car before, but that's what I would imagine it looks like.
Painful. So I do really like some of the more simple like kills in this. Like I think her name's Sally, the girl with the leg problem that is helping him out. When he gets to the police station,
That's Cordell's girlfriend.
I thought it was something else, but whatever. I know there's a relationship there. I didn't get that part, I guess. But when he pulls her through the glass window of the door, I was like, well, that was pretty intense.
Yeah.
Like, because he comes out, like, he just, like, manhandles her like a rag doll and just whips her through this door, and well, then she's done. And I thought the kill in the middle of the night where, I think it's the same guy who puts, like, his trumpet in his trunk or something like that. And Cordell just, like, handcuffs him and, like, lets him go run away for some reason.
Right. And nobody's on the street.
Chases him down. Yeah, no one's on the street, chases him down and finds some very, like, still wet cement. It's like at least 10 o'clock at night at this point is kind of what it implies. But this cement is like freshly laid wet cement. And he kind of drowns him in it, which I don't even know. I mean, I guess that would work. Yeah, I thought that was kind of funny, especially when they're out there like jackhammering.
And it looks like the shittiest
morning.
cement job of all time. Like, just the cement looks like dried oatmeal. It looks the worst.
I love the idea of, like, forget the CSI guys. I love the idea that they got two dudes in, like, the neon orange, like, jackets to go out there and just jackhammer around this corpse.
Side note, Cordell's girlfriend, Sally Noland. Do you know what else she did? You should know what else she did. She's Cosmo Kramer's mother.
Oh, well, see, I should know.
There you go. Cherie North.
Cosmo. So I guess, I mean, there's, like I said, there's certainly enough things to be moderately entertained by with it. I guess for me, where this movie falls short is, again, once Tom Atkins is out of the picture, I kind of just lose interest in most of what's happening in this movie, which is kind of a problem when you're basically handing the movie over to Bruce Campbell at this point, who I really like. I know you have mixed feelings on him, but I like him quite a bit.
Well, let me, just to clear the air, I don't dislike him. I think
I didn't mean it that.
Playing into that, like we mentioned before, kind of playing into that Bruce Campbell angle, and people like just instantly falling in love without ever seeing it of anything that he's done because of who he is. That kind of like, let's rate it on its own merit. But
that's fair. I don't disagree with you. But I mean, Campbell's not bad in this, but he doesn't do anything spectacular either. It's kind of run of the mill, like, cop movie at this point with, like, Godzilla chasing them.
Yeah.
Essentially. I don't know. It's got this kind of, well, I was going to save that for kind of when I wrap up, but it's got this whole feel to it where I feel like once Atkins is out of it, I don't feel like the movie really totally knows what it wants to be. And by that, is this a slasher movie? Is this a cop movie? Is this an action movie? It's kind of trying to play.
Yeah, is it a mystery?
Yeah. Well, there's definitely no mystery at that point.
Yeah,
we know
true.
exactly
the
what's
mystery's
going
all
on.
up until that point. You know, the only mystery, and I find it really interesting that we see what Cordell looks like pre-death, right? Quote unquote death. And they show his face in the newspaper clippings. They might show it in flashbacks, but they do their damnedest. Even after you see what his face looks like post the shower fight, like he gets put into jail. He's like a super cop. All the cops love him, but he's a little too excessive, and he gets put in jail for something. I don't remember exactly what it was. And he gets put in Sing Sing, and these other prisoners get in a fight with him in the shower, and they have blades, and they cut his face up, and they stab him and all this stuff, shank him and whatnot. And whatnot. You know, you just end a shanking sentence and whatnot.
As you do.
Yeah, as you do. And so you see his face all sliced up, but they do their damnedest when he is Maniac Cop, of not showing his face until like the end. And I was just like, it's really weird that they conceal his face for so long when you kind of, by the time Atkins dies, again, 45 minutes, spoiler, you know what he looks like. There's no mystery. Like, I don't know why they're doing like such a, like they're putting in so much work to hide him, but it is pretty cool. Like how they obscure him, or he's in the darkness, or they have like the pillar of the two windows of the paddy wagon, You can't see his face.
It feels like if they're going to do that, they should carry it almost all the way up until when he's got, Bruce in that chokehold, and they treat that like it's the big reveal of his face.
Right. But it's not.
But we've seen it like countless times at that point. So it's like, oh, okay.
It's
so
a guy with real scars on his face who didn't brush his teeth. Oh, no.
He's British.
Yeah, it should almost be like a Jason moment. Like they save that big moment of the unmask until like a real, heightened part of the movie. And this, they just show him willy-nilly, but they hide him the other half of the time. It's cool in a way, but it's weird in another.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really want to just like trash this movie because I don't really think it's deserving of that. I guess for me, it kind of falls apart in the second half, really, just because it doesn't even fall apart. It just kind of loses its direction, and that takes a lot away from it for me. Basically, after like watching it this time, I was like, I don't know when the last time I watched it before this, but at least 10 years. I can see why I probably won't watch this again for another 10 years. So
yeah, it definitely loses a lot of steam once Atkins is out of the picture.
Yeah, and then I don't know how you write this movie and keep him like alive through the whole thing. Like, I'm sure, clearly they wrote a movie and they had every intention of making him, expendable for whatever reason. But if they could have found a way to keep him like through this whole movie, maybe you would be leaning more into like cop movie territory at that point as opposed to horror movie territory. And that's why he's, 86. But it takes so much out of the movie because he's the glue of this whole film. So
I kind of feel a little bit hypocritical because I have mentioned in the past that I love movies where the hero is killed like midstream.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you.
But I just think in this way, if they just could have done something to continue the momentum with Campbell, it could have been a lot better. And I feel like, and I hope it doesn't come across that we're trashing the movie like you said before, but I kind of feel like Maniac Cop 2, I had the same kind of feeling. I haven't seen Maniac Cop 2 in forever, and I feel like in my head...
I haven't seen that in even longer than this one.
I feel in my head the same way that you just talked about this one, so I'm kind of curious to go and watch 2 and see if it holds up as well as I think it does. In my head.
Well, all three of these are on Tubi right now. So whether it's you or anyone else wants to, these are very accessible currently.
Very true.
I know in 2, it starts going into like more supernatural stuff.
Yeah.
But that's a story for another podcast. I don't know that I have a whole lot more to add on this. Do you have anything you want to add before we start wrapping here?
No, I think we've hit a lot of high points and we've kind of given some criticism. I think it's time for some hot dogs.
All right. You want to go first or you want me to go first?
I'll let you go first.
I mean, I'd probably give this movie a solid, this is kind of right in the middle for me. I'd give this 5 Bloody Billy Club swords out of 10 well-mustard hot dogs. This movie to me feels kind of like what happens when you see a movie like Bad Lieutenant and say, I want to make that, but a horror movie. The only problem with that is this movie happens about 4 years before Bad Lieutenant came out, so it doesn't really fit that. There's good things in it. Again, the cast is about everything you could ask for in this kind of movie. It's well directed. It, like you mentioned, it looks fantastic. It does do some real good jobs of saying like creepy, grimy vibes. It's just, it loses all its steam by halfway through for me. And it really does take you out. And it's kind of a damn shame that you can still have Bruce Campbell trying to carry your movie, even though he has some redeeming parts in the second half where he does very like typical Bruce Campbell stuff where they'll throw him around the back of a paddy wagon or the likes of that type of thing, like some very body humor type stuff. It's not enough to kind of make, basically once Atkins gets thrown out the window, my attention span for the movie goes right out with it and is laying under the tires of the same car that he fell in, and it just kind of turns into generic, like, I don't even want to call it a horror movie so much. It just turns into like generic 80s, like action, lot of dead body type movie. Like it doesn't even fit one genre completely. It's fine for what it is. And I'm sure when I found this in a video store, I probably liked it a lot more when I didn't have a billion different options available at my fingertips. But for me, it really doesn't hold up as much as I would have liked it to. It's worth watching. I'll probably go back and revisit it in another decade, but for now, that's enough for me.
Make some very salient points there, John.
Salient?
Yeah, salient. I don't know. All right, for me, I think Maniac Cop rides that fine line between being like a mainstream movie and a B movie. Kind of talked about that with the way it looks, and I think that the movie technically looks really well done. Some of the stunts They look like total pain fests where either they went wrong and they kept them in, or they went extremely right and people almost lost their lives. I think that's generally a plus. I like that they use New York City as a backdrop. For me, it gives, maybe that's where it adds a little bit of that expensive kind of feel, you know, where the movie didn't probably cost more than $1 million, but it looks really well done. This is as I mentioned earlier, one of the movies that I can think about where Bruce Campbell doesn't play either Ash or he's not playing Bruce Campbell. Maniac Cop, to me, doesn't really feel over the top. Like we talk about these, you know, in the vein of being horror, but it's not really all that gory. It's pretty tame, especially by today's standards. I think back in the day, maybe it felt like it was a little bit worse. And it's been so long since I've seen it. I don't even know what my mindset would have been when I saw it initially, if I felt like it was over the top. But all that stuff, you know, like I said, it kind of straddles the line. For me, I got to give it 6.5 nude shower fight scenes out of 11 hot dogs.
Both equally sticky and bloody. So
no dongs. Don't see any flopping dongs. Maybe that's for the best.
No dongs in this. That's true. Maybe that's for the best. I don't know. Never know. So, although I don't think there's any boobs in this one either. So
everything's more exciting with a flopping dong.
That's also true. All right. Question of the week. So we asked you for feedback on this, and boy, did you deliver on this one. Question of the week is a pretty simple one. What is your favorite Tom Atkins movie? And I added the caveat of and why.
Oh,
I didn't want to just say the same 3 movies over and over again.
Yeah.
So I added and why. So where do we start? Let's start on Twitter. So you might have to edit around this as I kind of figure out everyone's name. So I apologize for that.
This is the best part of the show.
Is it? All right. So Voices from the Mausoleum. She is a YouTuber, has an awesome channel. You should absolutely follow her. If you search her on YouTube, Voices from the Mausoleum is how you'll find her. And on Twitter, she is @from Mausoleum. What is your favorite Tom Atkins movie? Those who know me know the answer. This film is unsettlingly unique in every way. She's referring to Halloween 3. The ending is one of my all-time favorites in all of horror. Fair. Like it. Another podcast, Everything's Scary at 3 a.m., which I like that name. That's a good podcast name.
I would agree.
Also went with, they said, some people will say Night of the Creeps. It's a fine movie. It's not Halloween 3, though. Okay. Flipping over because I'm looking at my phone and I'm going to go over these real quick. Our friend Average Drewski, you can also follow him on Instagram and YouTube @Average Drewski, said Halloween 3, followed closely by Lethal Weapon, because the way he dies makes me laugh my ass off. Our friends on the You Run podcast also said Halloween 3 because of Tom Atkins. So I like that answer. Actually, it's simple to the point. Our friend Jordana over at Pretty Killer Podcast and Feature Creature DTF, she said The Fog, final answer. And the reason why is because Creeps and Season of the Witch are 2 of her favorites, but I think The Fog is almost perfection for me. The cast is great. The visuals are super and appealing. Love The Fisherman, love the score, and of course, John Carpenter. So I have absolutely no argument against any of that. I need water. This isn't even half of them. We got a ways to go still.
If you want to just condense and tell us that everybody said Halloween, these remaining people said Halloween.
Well, it was basically a split between Halloween and Night of the Creeps. Stephanie Sermon, she flat out said all of them, period. Like that response too. We got a couple people that said Lethal Weapon, Night of the Creeps and The Fog popped up. Like I said, Night of the Creeps, Fog, and Halloween 3 are the ones that popped up the most. What's your favorite Tom Atkins movie, Sean?
I got to go with the general consensus of the audience. I think Halloween 3 is probably the movie that I saw him in first, you know, being, 82 or whatever when that came out. And Halloween 3, I think at the time was kind of disappointing, but Tom Atkins was he put in a good performance regardless. And it took me a lot of years until I got older to watch Halloween 3 again to say, oh, no, this is a pretty good movie. And I think what it was is because it carried, you know, when I watched it, I was 12 or 10 or 8 or however old I was. And you're really wanting to see a Halloween movie. You're really wanting to see Michael Myers. And then, you know, he's not in it at all. And you're kind of like, oh, man, I just wasted my one rental for the month on a movie I wanted to watch. And, you know, no Michael Myers is bullshit in a 7-year-old voice. But Yeah, I think he really carries he carries that whole movie. You know, he's just a badass. You're just like, fucking Chalice, man. He's gonna solve this crime.
Right.
And, like, I don't remember who you said Voices from the Mausoleum. I think the ending is just like, you know, shut it off or whatever, the Silver Shamrock stuff playing. He's a badass in that movie, and you know, how couldn't you like him? But Night of the Creeps is valid too. You know, thrill me. So.
Well, Night of the Creeps is my answer. It's not to take anything away from Halloween 3. I love that movie too, but Night of the Creeps hits that right level of schlock for me. It's so quotable, and his character Cameron just makes me laugh my ass off. And my all-time favorite quote of his is from that movie with the Miller Time quote. But I do want to give an honorable mention because I want to, like, he's got so much stuff that he's great in. I'm going to throw something outside the box at it as an honorable mention. I really liked him for his 2-episode run in Oz. He was a character on there just real briefly, and it's one of those, it happened in season 6. A lot of people might have already been checked out by that point, but he played a really dark, he played a fucking creep, to be honest. But it's one of those, again, that show is so weird because you're like, oh man, this is really dark and intense. You're like, hey, there's Tom Atkins. I'm feeling better. Oh, he's kind of a prick. But he's really good in that. His like filmography is just insane. Like how many great things he's been in, whether it's big role, small role, and everything in between. So absolutely worth, watch as much of it as you can, right? So, and
just to mention, if you heard all these people's names being read off, and John did an excellent job of reading their names and what they had to say.
Yeah.
If you'd like to get involved in the conversation, follow us on social media. We'll tell you where to follow us. It's obviously at Dewey Pod Monster on all the different platforms, but follow us on there. Every week before the show goes out, we put the question of the week out, and we want to hear what you guys have to say. So, you know, it's your way to directly interact with us on what we're talking about this week.
What Sean said. Do we got anything else we want to do kind of housekeeping wise here before we start wrapping on this?
No, I think we're still looking for people to tell us if they want to do some kind of, we're trying to figure out a way to do watch parties with people, and it's not going to be obviously every week, but maybe once a month. If you're interested in us in that kind of situation, drop us a line. We'll figure something out. But we got to know that you're interested.
Yeah, we've also talked about doing just kind of like separate live streams where you just kind of hang out with us and we shoot the shit. If you go back to some of our early episodes that were like more beer heavy, it'd be probably more similar to that, but live, and we'll just put those up through our YouTube or something like that. So if you're interested in us doing one of those, or if you want to come chat with us for an hour or two on one of those, let us know. We can arrange that as well. Yeah,
we need to get back to more shoot the shit, but it's kind of hard because it's kind of more of a limited kind of audience thing.
Scheduling too. So
we got episodes to record, movies to talk about, things to consume. So that's
right. People aren't going to just sit there and like not talk about Star Slammer. We need to make things happen. So
great example. On the tip of everyone's tongue.
Exactly.
This century, Star Slammer.
Hey, I know up until that episode came out, every night I went to sleep like, why hasn't anyone talked about Star Slammer? We have to justify.
Are people still not talking about Star Slammer?
Jesus
Bullshit.
Christ. I'm sure the 12 people that listen to that episode will totally be like, hey, I don't care.
Oh yeah, that.
Yeah. All right. I think that's all we got for this week. So again, as Sean mentioned, you could follow us everywhere on social media, just about anywhere that we can get on. If we are on there, it's going to be at Dewey Pod Monster, all the big ones, you know, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, TikTok, all the rest of that shit, wherever, at Dewey Pod Monster, search us. We're probably on there. Please check out our site, which is crap.town. You can leave us feedback on there. You can even leave us feedback in the episode. And yeah, if you are interested in coming on the show, send us a message. We will talk to you. And, you know, as long as you're not a dick, we'll probably have you on. So simple rules, right?
As long as you're not a dick.
Oh, Sean has stuff going on too, because that's more important. Sean, what do you got going on?
I guess if you're into craft beer, Michigan craft beer specifically, but sometimes other kind of craft beer, you can check out all the stuff that we're doing over at Draft Therapy. You can find us at youtube.drafttherapy. You can also find us on all the social media and see that we're not posting at Draft Therapy.
Post on there every once in a while.
No, I know. Me too. Yeah, you know, we both do, but
we totally went to a beer thing
it's like 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, there was a post.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think that's all we got. So in the meantime, don't be a dick. We'll talk to you soon. Cheers.
Sayonara, butt face.
You are
fuckface.